ask you this question because I can't remember if I've asked this to you before. Maybe I've asked you off air or something like that. But this is something that I thought was really interesting because everybody is really starting to talk about how much they hate the 3-point games, right? So you get a point for losing in overtime and stuff like that. What if we change the point system in the NHL and how they do it? Okay. So here's what, and this is not my suggestion. This is a suggestion that I saw on Twitter, and I thought it was an interesting take. So I thought I'd bring it up here. If you get a regulation win, you get 3 points. Overtime
Yes.
win, 2 points. Overtime loss, 1 point. You lose, you get nothing. So
I
it's sort of kind of it's sort of kind of the way that's soccer does a lot of their stuff, especially over in Europe. But what would you think about something like that?
have
Making
advocated that
regulation
multiple
wins.
times.
Yeah. So
Lots. I've done
so
that a
you
lot.
do like that idea?
Absolutely, because it punishes you for going to overtime too, which I think you need to. Because like if you don't win in regulation, you did something wrong. You weren't obviously better. So I like that absolutely.
And
Because
I'll
right
have
now
to.
the stars are where they are, and the only punishment they get is like, oh well, if you're tied, which has never really happened, then
Mhm,
you don't win the tiebreaker. Oh
right.
no. What a
Yeah,
terrible, terrible punishment.
and I totally agree with the fact that ties are stupid. I'm glad they're out of the game. That was something they got rid of after the 04-05 lockout. I'm glad they got rid of that. But I mean, I think that's a fantastic way to reward teams, for getting that. And and here's another question that I had. If you go to 3-on-3. I still think 3-on-3 is one of the greatest things they've ever come up with. It's fantastic. It's made the game extremely exciting when, games go to overtime. Should they Oh, okay, so yeah, Ardell's already mentioning it. 10 minutes of 3-on-3. What do you think about that? I've seen that a lot from not just Stars fans but hockey fans. I like that idea. And then but the only problem is how do you end the game? Because you don't want to end the game on 10 minutes on 3-on-3. But also the other decision to do is to do a shootout, which that sucks too.
I,
So
I honestly
did I
think
say shutout? I meant shootout. Sorry, but
having more than 5 minutes of 3-on-3 overtime would have the terrible unintended consequence of nobody attacking. Because you already see it sometimes where if you don't have the perfect lane, you'll just loop it back to your goalie and everyone will just skate in a circle again. And that still happens sometimes with 5-on-5. So if you give them 10 minutes to do that, I feel like you're going to actually ruin it and it's just going to get boring and people are going to pass it back in their own defensive zone until someone messes up and then they might go. But I think it would have the opposite effect actually. I think it would make it slower and I think it would give less chances. So
so
I think
you
5
like the
minutes is
point.
where it's at. And I
Sorry, go
think
ahead.
shootouts obviously aren't ideal. They're definitely not, but it's a way to decide it, and it's only 1 point in a regular season game. If there were shootouts in the playoffs, absolutely, I would agree with that. And there's penalty kicks in soccer for World Cup matches still. That's insane.
I
So
still I don't like that. I hate that.
the way hockey does overtime in the playoffs is the best in sports. You can't do that for regular season and still have an 82 game season. So it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect, but a shootout, at least there is some form of hockey being played and it just decides who gets the last point. So I'm cool with it.
And again, only 2 points. Like
Yeah.
both teams get a point after the 3-on-3 if it, goes all the way through. And then it ends right there. Both teams at least get a point, and then they go to a shootout to get one additional point.
Yeah.
I think I like that idea. So you think keep the points or change the point system, make regulation wins more important, and then when it comes to the overtime stuff, basically keep it the same. 5 minutes of 3-on-3, and then do the shootout. Is that what
Yep.
I'm getting?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yep, I agree too. So I mean that's the best case scenario. I don't think there's a better alternative than that. And you know what's funny about all this? Us agreeing on this and saying, "Oh, well, 3 points should be for regulation wins." If that was the point system this year, I don't think the Stars make the playoffs.
Oh, no way. Not a chance.
Not a chance that the Stars make the playoffs. So, and I mean, they still kind of make regulation wins important in the fact that that's the first tiebreaker.
Not
But
nearly as much, though.
again, the
Ties almost never
tiebreaker,
happen in hockey for some reason, actually.
right? Yeah, the tiebreakers when it comes to points in the standings, it very rarely happens. So,
Which is weird because
anyways,
in baseball, like,
it
there's
happens all the
one-game
time.
playoffs, like, every 3 years, I feel like, to get
Mhm.
into the playoffs. And just hockey just doesn't happen. Weird.
I want to bring this up too. Sorry, I know we're going long, but I thought this was interesting too. I didn't know that the NBA did this. So here's what the NBA does. Okay, so they actually have a play-in round, kind of like how the NCAA does their March Madness tournament, right? So they have 4 teams that can go in and get those number 16 spots in the March Madness tournament, which, I mean, you could argue about it or whatever. So what the NBA actually does is that with the bottom 2 teams that are there in the standings, they play against one another. Okay? So, it's just a one game playoff type atmosphere, right? So those 2 teams play together, okay? So 7 and 8 play against each other. Number Let's just say the 7th team wins. Okay, the 7th seeded team wins. Then the 9 and 10 seed play against each other, and let's say that the 10th wins. Well, then the 8th seed will then have to go and play against the 10th seed for that final playoff spot. So that
All one
adds
game.
in, yeah, all one game. So I think that's a really interesting and creative way to get more teams possibly into the playoffs. Now, more than
I
likely, it leads to more. It still leads to first round exits for those teams, more than likely, but it could also lead to Cinderella runs. So, do you like that idea or do you dislike that idea?
I like that for basketball. I think having 4 teams in that situation is a little gimmicky. I think the best version, if you wanna have, like, a one-game winner takes all playoff style, the best way to do that is the way baseball does it and just have the bottom 2 from each league playing against each other and have the one-game winner to take all that way. But I just think it's not hockey playoffs, even if you had a one-game playoff, it's not actually Stanley Cup playoffs until it's a 7-game series. There's something different and magical about hockey playoffs that is just a grueling marathon. And it's just all out war for 7 straight games that just makes hockey playoffs awesome. And I just think a one-game playoff format, it just doesn't work
Would
as
slightly
well for
ruin that.
hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even the Olympic tournaments or the what were they called? The non-Olympics that the NHL put on.
The World Cup.
Even those, yeah, the World Cup of hockey. Even those, they feel a little strange to me. Like, they're fun to have the one game, but it's not the same as Stanley Cup playoffs. Stanley Cup playoffs are something special, and I just don't think a one game playoff fits into that mold well. I like the way it is now.
So you say leave that to baseball and basketball and keep hockey the way that
Leave
it
that.
is.
What I would do is there's no tiebreaker stat. I would get rid of the tiebreaker regulation wins, which obviously would be done away with by the 3-point thing that we were talking about earlier. But even
Mhm.
if we do that and there's still a tie somehow, don't decide it by a stat. If 2 teams are tied for the 8th spot, they play a game. The team that was higher in the beginning of the season and the other it plays at home. The team that caught up to them plays on the road. One game playoff. Whoever wins it gets into the 8th spot. That would be fun, and that would be like a once in 5-year thing. It would be a big deal. It'd blow up on social media. So I think
Okay,
that's what
so
you gotta
what
do,
what
and that's
about
what MLB does too.
the situation that the Stars and the Nashville Predators are in right now? Because I mean,
Mhm.
aren't they tied for points right now? Am I wrong? They are
Yes.
tied for points right now, so they're both in the playoffs. But would you have them go and do a one game playoff kind of thing to see which team goes?
No, you're in the playoffs. At that point, doesn't matter as much. The difference between being in and being out is such a huge difference. The difference between seeding when you're already in the playoffs, honestly, at the end of the day, not that big of a difference. You're gonna have to beat all the teams anyway.
That's true. So good discussion there. Sorry, I know that was kind of random there at the end, but I've seen a lot of that, especially with the end of the playoffs coming up, and the board of governors meetings are coming up here in the off season, and I really thought that was interesting. 3 points for a
Yep.
regulation win, two for
Fun stuff to
an
talk about.
overtime loss, zero for if you just lose in regulation. So I think that would be great. I don't think it's going to change, but it might. So anything else, Chris?